Hello, I'm Jenson Button, and due to technical difficulties, I will not be appearing in this podcast. Send help, someone, please. Please, help me. Help.
Hello and welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed, brought to you with enormous difficulty tonight in between Richard periscoping earlier on. Oh, we'll talk about that again, I think,
Is
later.
That some kind of sexual practice that people do
Most
in
people
parks,
think that, yeah, it's like docking. Zog's here, finally.
Hello.
So,
yes, apologies for my later on. But,
you had technical problems.
Yeah, I had technical problems. Yeah,
Briefly,
I won't go into the car maintenance saga I've been involved in for the last week or so. But having got the whole thing back together in anticipation of driving over this evening, I found that I clearly hadn't done up something quite as tight as it should be done up, because there was oil pouring out of somewhere. And,
with your skills, there is always a place for you in the McLaren team, I think, at the moment. I think they benefit from your skills.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Hey, McLaren sort of featured in the most recent Grand Prix.
I still have faith. I still have faith.
You really do, yeah?
Yeah, I do. I think that McLaren-Honda combination is going to work out, just not for the next couple of races.
What are they doing?
Oh, races? I thought you were about to say years.
Yeah.
Next year could be a contender.
Why do you say that?
I would happily eat my words if that happened. I just don't think this season anything spectacular is going to happen, because
Apart
if anything, they seem to be going backwards.
Yeah.
That's one of the few things they haven't done yet, is accidentally engage reverse off the line. And the good thing is they wouldn't actually back into any other cars, well, except possibly the Marussias.
Marussias, yeah, if they'd managed to actually start
Did you
a race,
find,
which they did,
in Sunday's race in Bahrain, that the Marussias occupied so little TV time that when one appeared on screen as one of the leaders lapped it, I was momentarily startled by what that car was, and I thought that a GP2 car had accidentally got onto the track at the wrong time or something.
What I am finding, though, is I'm finding it a little bit hard to distinguish between the McLarens and the Force Indias.
Yes.
There's something in the colour scheme,
from the front, yeah.
In Bahrain, from the front, there is a problem.
Yeah, that's what it is.
In Bahrain, when they were running under the lights, the McLaren looks black, and that's what confuses it even further.
Yeah, it is. It's black with then that very thin stripe around there, and you're right. It is
all the black on the lower part. Bahrain, I think it's pronounced.
Should we put down some plastic sheeting here? Because we're going to say Bahrain quite a lot.
So McLaren weren't the story, of course, of Bahrain, but the Ferrari resurgence was.
Yeah, they're still...
Notably Kimi in this case, too. Kim had a great race. We call him Kim? Kim. I've never called him Kim before. Kimi had a great race.
Yeah.
And didn't he look happy at the end?
Just
no, he didn't.
Spectacular. I liked also little window into racing drivers' mentality, and particularly I think Raikkonen mentality, is that his immediate reaction when interviewed was about, well, you're never happy with second, are you?
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it, because I think we were all going, well done him, didn't see that coming, could have gone away from him, but no, he got there, he got onto the second place,
but he wanted to win, but
he wanted to win, of course he did. I mean, I don't know, it's naive to think that racing drivers don't, they're never satisfied. Sure. It is the old Ron Dennis thing of second is first of the losers, but that's how racing drivers think, and I think when they're not first, and they are second or third, particularly if they're required to be interviewed, they go, the guys did a great job and all of that usual tedious stuff, but really they're thinking, damn it!
But actually, of course, it could have happened, with the brake problems
in the last two laps.
Actually,
that's what you want,
it could have happened, and wow, that would have been a result.
I don't wish ill on the Mercedes team. I think they've done a tremendous job, or are doing a tremendous job, but when the brakes fail on both cars in the last two laps, that's the stuff that motor racing's made of. They're pushing their abilities, their technology right to the very limit, and it can fail, and it should just about... What was it Colin Chapman said? You want a car that would break down the second it crossed the line.
Yeah, and Daniel Ricciardo dutifully obliged.
Hey, the spirit of Lotus is there in Red Bull, not in Enstone. Ferrari, I think they've done well to coalesce from the trouble chip that they were into quite a useful outfit at the moment, haven't they? James Allison's working, great business there. Kimi's clearly happy. Vettel, still in the early days, always happens when drivers first go to the Ferrari. Within a week they say things like, I'm always going to drive for Ferrari. They all say that.
And they all learn Italian, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I like the fact that Vettel's always on the radio with his linguaphone cassettes. I would like to book a hotel room. Yeah, they do, don't they? There's something about them. I don't know what happens when you walk through those.
I like it that the Ferrari are the Italian team, because the rest of the teams are pretty damn British, you know. Even Sauber, when Manisha Koltenborg speaks, she sounds like she was educated in Oxford, which I think she was. You know, so even...
No, Guido, I've told you, you can't have the seat. Oh, you can. Damn, I didn't read the small print.
But how much do you love Maurizio Arrivabene?
Yes.
I'm a huge fan.
He's the new Flavio!
Oh, no, come on. He's in another class.
Oh, hey,
Flab,
now then.
Please.
Yeah.
Speaking of Flab, as we were, someone on Twitter just on the way here this evening sent me a link to a Bentley Turbo R for sale, formerly owned by Flav.
Oh, smell of baby oil quite a lot.
I was going to say, if you got a forensic team to examine the interior of that car, my God, the things you'd find.
There are drivers down there. Honestly, all sorts of things. We miss Flav, but I am glad that Arrivabene's around. He's so jovial. Have you noticed? He's really genial and jovial.
But there's real steel in him as well.
Yes.
You know, he's got this almost perfect combination of steel and drive, but good humour. He's not
Like the mafia.
Oh, you see, I was
Charming people to work with.
I wasn't going to go there. I was going to say just like the proprietor of a restaurant
not fair.
who's very, very jovial front of house. Oh, welcome. Oh, you look so beautiful this evening. And your wife or partner giggles coquettishly at his charming Italian ways. Oh, signor, have you lost a weight? Oh, you're looking so good. Yes, hardly working or working hard. Okay, you have a seat. I bring you some bread. It'll be okay. Into the kitchen. And he's immediately shouting at all the staff in a horrible way.
That's exactly what
I think that's how Arriva buses might be. He's, he's genial enough to be good when he's interviewed, but he kicks arse back at the factory, and those arses probably need kicking.
He's come into the team at a time when a lot of the work that they are benefiting from now had been done. You know, that said, he's just the right man to push them on from that position and to really help them to reap the benefits.
It's a reboot.
Yeah, we're seeing,
Arriva Butte.
Ferrari, the new generation. Next generation.
Well, now I'm sort of mesmerised by his hair.
Very exciting.
It's fantastic.
I think he's got good hair.
Richard Gere's hair.
He's got the tattoos going on as well.
There's a backstory there, isn't there? Which I haven't bothered to look up. But what a life he's had.
Yeah.
I mean, he was running that restaurant for a start, and then he's got the hair. And I do think it's like politicians. They always say a bald man's never been prime minister. Apart from Churchill, maybe. But in the modern television age, certainly, in the modern media age, there's never been a bald man. Yeah, they've always said, it's why someone like Neil Kinnock or John Smith were not considered electable ultimately because they were basically slapheads. Ian Duncan Smith was the same, wasn't he? Who was that other bloke? William Hague. Yeah,
William Hague.
Slap me up. Hague.
I like to pretend I really am from York.
Yeah.
William Hague.
And they were all slapheads and none of them were Prime Minister. Whereas you look at John Major, Tony Blair, full heads of hair.
So how come Michael Portillo didn't make it to be
it's amazing, because on hair alone he would be highly electable. Maybe it was because of people found his personality repellent. I don't know.
That's probably it.
Too much of the smile about him. It's just simple.
Yeah. The only Michael Portillo impression I can do is to actually say his name in his voice. I can't take it beyond that. Michael Portillo.
It's a funny thing, since he stopped being a politician, he sort of seems to become quite likeable, because I've seen him on the TV and he doesn't make your skin crawl anymore. But
he actually does quite a good job of presenting those railway programs. Because
he seems to be quite interested in it all.
I'm not interested in cars.
He knows his subject.
I don't like cars, I like trains.
Does he not like cars? I wonder if he does like cars.
If you like trains, you won't like cars. I don't think the two go hand in hand.
Do you know who does like cars?
He would say take a train over a car.
Okay.
I would prefer to go on a train.
But what if he needs to go to somewhere that was badly served by stations because of Dr. Beeching's swinging cuts of the 1950s? He may have to get a minicab, but he just wouldn't be interested in it.
But he wouldn't care what it was.
He'd look wistfully back at the station thinking, I wish the train went there. But you know what? Someone who does like cars and also has quite good hair In fact, who looks like a sort of
politician.
Hitler. Did you just say Hitler?
Like
No,
cars.
I said
He had grey hair.
I said Hitler.
I thought you said Hitler.
Give me the fact.
I can see why you might
I
have
know
said
we were
Hitler.
talking about right-wing people, but you've gone really fast to the right there. No, Professor Robert Winston.
Robert Winston.
The doctor man off the telly.
Geneticist.
Geneticist.
Yeah.
Also has the
Because
same voice.
my executive producer, my former executive producer from Top Gear, once bumped into him in the BBC car park, and this was years ago, and he was getting into a Jag XJ, and my producer said, "Oh, nice Jag," and they started talking. And it became clear that he was quite into cars. And he said, "Would you want to come on Top Gear?" And he went, No, I'm very busy. And there's also, he's a very clever man. He probably didn't want to go on something as tawdry as that. But then, so my executive producer said, "Well, anyway, it's very nice to meet you, thank you." And he walked off. As he was walking off, Robert Winston shouted after him and went, "I've got an Austin 7 trials car as well," or something like that. And he got something really nerdy and obscure. But then Andy, my exec, was forced to sort of turn around and go back and re-engage in this car conversation. He's super into cars, and he's got good hair, so something to think on. We've gone a little bit off topic.
That's fine. Listen, let's just gather it up and we'll be back after this.
Signora Arrivabene, welcome back. You have come for another tattoo?
Sì.
And this will be the usual?
No, I haven't done any more of that. I want something new.
Okay, so what did you have in mind?
I want some special ancient symbol on my arm.
Sure, ancient symbols, we can do this. What do you want these symbols to say?
I think they should say, nice hair.
Sniff Petrol with Gareth Jones on speed!
As much as we talk about the blokes in Formula One, like Arrivabene, what a bloke he is, he's a sort of mega bloke, there are plenty of women in Formula One, but not necessarily driving cars. Now, there's an awful lot of talk about a change of culture in F1, where F1 should catch up with, the rest of the universe 20 years ago? But it's not happening yet. The WEC ditched their grid girls. Cool. They line their cars up diagonally for a Le Mans start. Cool. There were no grid girls. Formula One is hanging on to that, isn't it? Is it doing damage to the brand?
I don't think it is, to be honest, but it does look a little bit outdated. Much as I love looking at scantily clad women, it is pretty sexist to have an entire grid of scantily clad women holding the flags, rather than I don't know how you have a gender equal male models and
well, I suppose you could do, but the whole thing is just first of all,
drones.
Is it actually necessary for somebody to stand there with a number, or is it really just?
Actually, Pastor Maldonado could have done with something showing him where to park his car on the grid in Bahrain.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, rain.
How bad does it look? It looks a little bit sort of out of date, but it's not grossly offensive.
It's just that it cements the idea that Formula One is this rather archaic boys' club of idiocy.
And also that it's a sport for men rather than...
and that's the thing. Do you know, because I do that drivel about F1 when there's a race on Twitter. And if I'm just on Twitter normally and I'm talking about, I don't know, a Vauxhall or some old Rover that I've seen, and everyone who replies to that will pretty much be a bloke. But when I'm talking about Formula One, I'd say the split of feedback is not quite 50-50, but it's damn close sometimes. And depends what you're talking about as well. But if it's just commentating during a race, the people who are chipping in and replying and stuff like that, F1 is very popular with men and women.
I think it's a mindset, irrespective of your gender. You can watch F1 and get something from it because it's a sport that satisfies the sort of things that you're interested in, and so that tactical thinking thing.
Well, I don't know, what if you're interested in 3-field rotational crop system?
Ooh. Really?
Do they do that in
Formula One? Maybe not, no.
Sorry, but yes, I do know what you mean. But the thing is, it just seems that it's not necessary, and it would be a very, very powerful statement, I suppose, for Formula One to drop it.
Yeah.
Just to say, look, how not stuck in the 1970s we are, because apart from anything else, just because Formula One is sort of populated by, and particularly because it's led by, 109-year-old man, there's just a sort of feeling that its attitudes are slightly out of date. And a 109-year-old man who says things like social media is unnecessary and a girl in a really short skirt holding a lollipop with a number on it is necessary. It just reinforces that view that the sport that we love to the outside world looks slightly crap and crass, and that it's unable to move with the times. Because let's be honest, although they can attempt to introduce hybrid power units and things like that, the fact is they're flying 747s full of stuff around the world and then driving round in circles. If they really cared that much about saving fuel, they wouldn't do any of those things. I'd prefer them to bring V8s back, but actually look at how they can make the sport just seem more relevant to the world in general. The amount of fuel they're using driving around in circles is relatively little, but in the general scheme of things, it's not that bad. It seems like a token gesture.
Well, this is a very complicated issue, I think, because whilst you're absolutely on the money there when you say that the fuel burnt during a race is a trivial amount compared to the amount of fuel that is burnt
people driving
shifting the teams to and from the races. But yes, exactly. Also taking people to and from the races. And this applies to any major sporting event, whether it's a Grand Prix or, some big cup final or a big rugby event. The amount of fuel that is going to be burnt in planes, in cars, getting people to and from the events is the big part of the carbon footprint of that event. And in an F1 race, the amount of fuel that is actually burnt by the cars in the race is a tiny part of the overall carbon footprint of that event. But the engine technology in those vehicles has to be relevant. If you're going to attract major manufacturers, and the sport, I think, needs to have major manufacturers involved, you can't expect to have Mercedes and Honda and Renault involved in the sport if they are going to be running outdated engine tech that doesn't relate to what they want to put in their road vehicles and doesn't push. I think
yes and no, because if you look at racing in the US, NASCAR, for example, is a good example of that. And Toyota wanted in on that. But Toyota wanted in on NASCAR, even though the fact that they don't allow hybrids and it's all extremely crude, and yet hybrid technology is very big in every single country that Toyota sells cars. Certainly in the Western world, they do, in fact, a much bigger range of hybrids in the US than they do here, because you can get pretty much every car they sell as a hybrid. That's vital to them because they do want to make some difference in their road cars and make them more efficient and certainly less gas guzzling, but they'll happily pitch into NASCAR with a pushrod V8 in an old ladder frame chassis, essentially thundering around the place, just because it's good marketing, because if they can kick the arse of two of their major rivals in the marketplace. That's all just about how you spin the marketing, really. And let's be honest, it is all marketing. There's no sincere belief that they will get usable technology out of F1 into their road cars. These things happen in parallel. The crossover, I believe, is actually very minimal.
There is a degree of crossover.
I think what you're talking about...
in the same way the space program sometimes crosses over into real life, and that's why we have non-stick pans, but it's not absolutely necessary for one to relate to the other.
Okay, the space program, it wasn't
I've opened a Teflon can of worms.
I'll keep this brief, because it wasn't just the direct spin-offs of the space program, but it accelerated America's education system, their knowledge of solid-state electronics,
industry, for example,
to the point where we now have
but also, let's
not
forget that putting a man on the moon was also a marketing exercise.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So,
to the Russians that
it was a proxy for fighting a nuclear war.
The World War III. Anyway,
that's good marketing. If you can stave off the World War, that's one hell of an ad campaign.
What was Doug was saying then about making Formula One more relevant to the people who watch it, eliminating the girls, the teams, the manufacturers need cars with recognisable technology that they can sell on Monday, win on Sunday, that old adage. And how about appealing even better to women and supporting women to get into Formula One? I'm not talking about what Bernie's talking about here, and that's a dedicated female F1 sub-series. I'm talking about, because there are fewer women driving karts than there are lads, there's a smaller sample to choose from, and that is the only reason there aren't more women in F1 at the moment. If we really targeted young women now, girls who are learning to kart, in 10 years we could could have race drivers who are not male. And Jenson Button, bless him, said a marvellous thing the other day when asked about his view on whether there should be a female sub-series F1. He said, well, it's not a physical sport. I'm pretty fit, but I can't run a marathon as quick as Paula Radcliffe. And the point that he was making, if you can find women who are fitter than him, then they're going to be able to drive a car. It's just a matter of experience. He doesn't see why there should be a separate series. And he's right.
Yeah, I think
having women in F1, that would address 50% of the population of the planet, wouldn't it?
Okay, but do you need women drivers for women to be interested in F1? Not necessarily.
No,
it would have, that's not. Yep. But I think it's absolutely true. If there was a larger pool of women drivers in the lower Formula E and coming out of karting, then yes, more of them would make it through to F1. Because I don't think the sport discriminates. I don't think that it is now the kind of environment where a woman driver with the necessary talent would find the deck stacked against her. I think, if anything, they would find that they were a more commercially attractive proposition.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it just needs, more women to be coming out of the world of karting and the junior Formula.
There's another area where I'd like to see more women drivers, and it's based on an experience I had this evening. Minicabs. Because I got a cab from my local cab firm, and there's a couple of unusual things. First of all, it was a Volvo S80 turned up.
Oh, very nice.
Leathery? Very leathery. Plum-coloured leather.
Oh, cheeky.
Quite nice. And a manual gearbox, unusual in a big car like that. Driven by a Eastern European lady, and she was one of the best minicab drivers I've had in a long time, because there's always that slight fear of death in the worst of minicabs, where they drive incredibly aggressively and late brake, but not in a kind of cool racing driver way, just in a kind of they didn't see anything coming sort of way. And there was none of that. She was incredibly smooth, incredibly relaxed, courteous driver. I felt then at ease that I wasn't about to die in this lovely, comfortable Volvo as well. And I also thought, because statistically the average woman is smaller than the average man, means the front seat can be a little bit further forward, more rear legroom for passengers. And you denied that kind of aggressive testosterone-fueled idiocy of which we're all guilty as men.
Yes.
And you get a much safer, more relaxing, chauffeur-driven experience. I thought, that's it. Why are more women minicab drivers?
Was she driving as though there was a bowl on the bonnet?
It was a bit Jackie Stewart, yes.
Was her name Jackie?
It was not. I don't think so. I didn't ask, but I thought Alan Prost. Because she was
Madame Professeur.
She was just quite smooth on all the controls. Lovely soft hands on the wheel. It was good. This is an area for further thought.
I'll back that, yeah.
There we go. Our campaign for women drivers in a professional role starts with minicabs. Hello, could I get a taxi, please?
Yes, mate, no problem. I'll get a driver to you in 10 minutes. Is that Richard?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Actually, which of the girls are you going to send?
Girls are all on other jobs at the moment, Richard. I'm sending a new driver this evening. His name's Pastor.
You know what? I'll walk.
Gareth Jones on speed.
Two words to wrap up talking about female drivers before we move on to the next thing. Two words. Michelle Mouton.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's it. Right. So with women not coming immediately into Formula One, there is still a lot of talk about how Formula One is going to change over the next 3 years. I believe in 2017 there's like a reset button, isn't there? They have to do a reset.
Every couple of years. They just,
And they're talking about reinventing it. There had been talk of a V8 engine. There has been talk of 1,000 brake horsepower, and in order to achieve that we retain the V6s and we open the fuel limit. There's been talk of random grids. Random grids, doing away with qualifying altogether.
Wasn't there just one of Bernie's kind of throw it out there ideas?
With
Exactly.
the sprinklers and the...
wider cars that look like 92. Basically anything that Max put in place. Narrower cars to allow overtaking. That was what Max brought in, one of his things, limiting the amount of grip and maximum corner speed so people weren't dying in the sport. I sound like I'm defending Max here.
He did some good things.
Yeah,
a lot of good things to do with safety.
Yes, true.
Credit where it's due.
He really whipped that into shape, didn't he? It was... Why? Why are you laughing?
Go on, keep talking quickly.
These are all potentially on the horizon for Formula One, including the most bizarre of them all, in my opinion, and that's Junior Formula One. Have you heard about this? If the grid drops below the 20 cars, if it goes down to 18, the teams are obliged to run a third car. They can only put a junior driver in it. Someone who's not driven in Formula 1 before, so it's their debut season for every one of these drivers. And that third car runs in a separate championship to Formula 1, but on the same circuit at the same time, in the way that the WEC is, or Le Mans. There's 3 races going on, 4 races going on, 5 if you have subclasses. So when you had the podium, you'd have the overall winner, second and third place, and the junior winner as well.
Shaking up a bottle of pop.
Problem is,
a big bottle of Coke or Fanta or something.
Yeah.
but surely the problem is if you've only got a handful of drivers in this junior category, and there will only be a handful if they're the third drivers for 3 or 4 teams to make up the numbers, does anyone really care who wins out of that little junior group? And what, you're going to have a podium ceremony for 3 of the 4 of them? Or how's that? I don't know, it just seems like a rather unnecessary.
Yeah, because which teams not all the teams are obliged to run a third car, are they? Surely the lower teams can't afford to. No, is that Marussia? Could you get a third car ready? What? Well, we barely got 2.
The reasoning,
Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, they're the ones who I understood would be expected to run
Williams too. The reasoning for
McLaren.
this,
Could we have another one of your extremely useless engines, please?
The reasoning for running the third car in a separate junior championship is that the lesser teams, the non-grandee teams who wouldn't be running 3 cars, if all the cars are running in the same championship as them, they would be bumped down the order because they had less of a chance of scoring points. And so part of the agreement to allow some teams to run, but not all because you can't afford it, is that they run in a separate championship so it doesn't prejudice the performance of the lower teams. I get that.
Yeah,
that's sensible thinking. But it begs the question, what's GP2 for? What then happens to GP2?
Yeah.
Does that move that down a class?
Yeah, although the impact on a whole other series of what's happening in a kind of an addendum to F1, I'm not sure that would be too much of an issue for them.
Yeah.
It's not.
We don't care, we are F1.
Yeah.
We put a horse in your head.
One of the criticisms that sometimes level at F1 is that it can be a bit confusing, and it's not as simple as it could be for somebody that doesn't really follow the sport to understand, why this is happening at this point. What is this DRS thing? Why do they have to change to this tyre at this point? It doesn't make it any easier to follow if you've got a junior formula, if you've got a second category within the race.
You've got an incredibly dominant car like the Mercedes was last season, and even some snot-faced, acne-ridden squirt might be able to do quite well in it compared to some of the other teams on the grid.
What if they won the race?
Exactly. I was going to say, what if they came third? And then you've got to explain something. So why is that bloke who came third, or that girl who came third in this new feature we're envisaging, why are they not on the podium then? Because they're in a different championship, because they're 17 or 18 or whatever.
I totally see the problem for the teams at the back of the grid, or the teams that, aren't supposed to run a third driver because everyone accepts they don't have the money and the resources to do it. I totally understand that you don't want to have their season and their point scoring potential hit by bringing in third drivers for the better teams.
How do they reconfigure the pit lane? Because you'd need 3 garages for those teams, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. Well, they used to have room for a spare car previously. They could get 3 abreast, so that would work. The only thing that would save Formula 1, in my opinion, is a bit of what Gordon Brown called quantitative easing. They need to move some of the money around the grid. It's too expensive for the lesser teams. It's too expensive for the bigger teams. They need to do what Americans do with the NFL or the basketball in the States, and they share the money that they get from television more evenly.
To be picky, this is redistributive taxation rather than
quantitative easing. Yes, I'm technical matters. I'm joking about that.
I don't really know anything about the NFL, but it's always struck me as not in any way corrupt. Why are you laughing again? What's wrong with you today? I'm sure it's completely legit, and that would be fine in F1 as well. The money would always go exactly where it was supposed to go.
They just have to make it a bit cheaper. If they could just find a way that everybody could agree on, I guess that's part of the problem, to bring the cost down, then it wouldn't be so insanely expensive for the...
Do you know what managed to keep the cost down for the last 10 years?
I don't know.
Oh God, I was hoping you did know, because I don't know either. I wish there was a way that we could go, we've got it.
And you know what managed to keep the cost down for Formula 1, 8 years ago when it was in crisis then? The engine freeze. Max! Again?
Well, why don't you just marry him if he says I did so brilliant then?
I find him a little worrying.
Do you?
But fair play, he had some good policies. Yeah. You've been listening to Gareth Jones on Speed, failing to redefine the future of Formula One, as did...
Yeah, I was hoping, looking to the example of Max, we could have really spanked this one, but... Why are you laughing again?
That was
Pull
Richard.
yourself together. Goodbye.
That was Zog.
Goodbye.
I was Gareth. See ya.
To send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site, follow us on Twitter, or to find out about sponsorship opportunities, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whizbang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!